right, we've got the function. To function, the body needs energy. So where do we get our energy? Well, most of the molecules of the body form organic compounds. So to be organic, we have to have carbon. We're made up of carbon. We have inorganic compounds. So these are water, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and some acids and bases. You do need to know what this means. To synthesize, we're going to take two elements, put them together to create a compound. So we're building something brand new, adding together. Decomposition, we're breaking it down. So decomp, to decay. So break apart into its individuals. Exchange, we're moving it around, shuffling, making something new. Water has a unique characteristic. When we went to the water treatment plant, he talked about these things, talked about water being the universal solvent. So about leaving that bottle of water in the plastic container inside your car, heating up, well, it'll start pulling all those poisons out of that plastic into the water, and then you drink it. So bad. It also is a lubricant. Think about trying to eat crackers. Eat a whole bunch of crackers, and they start to sop up the saliva in your mouth and become very dry, and it's really hard to swallow. Or if you've ever done that cinnamon challenge where you take a spoonful of cinnamon, it automatically sucks up all the saliva in your mouth, which is water, and then you can't swallow it. So you have to have it as a lubricant to help things move down and move through. Changes in temperature slowly. Think about how long it takes to boil water. It's got a high boiling point as well as a really low freezing point. So that big range is great for inside our body because we can go up and down. Acids, we're looking at strong and weak acids. All that is really saying, and when you're looking at acid concentration, you're really looking at the number of hydrogen ions you have. So how many of those guys do I have in a solution? So if I have a whole bunch of them, then that means I have a strong acid. If I don't have a whole bunch, I just have a few, then I have a weaker acid. So it's the concentration, tells you on that scale where I'm at. Acids and bases, so a lot of your bases are going to be hydroxy ions. But there are also nitrogen ions as well that are considered bases, so they're not always your hydroxy ions. So, again, we're not necessarily looking at the concentration of hydroxy ions, but we're looking at, okay, how many hydrogen ions are in there? Well, none. So it's got to be a really strong base. They love to bind and pick up hydrogen ions. So then they'll combine with them, and then we no longer have hydrogen ions. We put them together, we don't end up with a acid anymore. We'll neutralize it. So let's get out of here and look at our acids and bases. We'll go over the pH scale and all that jazz as well in class.
An acid is any substance that releases a hydrogen ion when dissolved in water. Because of this, acids are sometimes called proton donors. A strong acid completely dissociates into hydrogen and an ion. For example, when hydrochloric acid is dissolved in water, it dissociates into hydrogen and chloride. In contrast, carbonic acid dissociates very little and produces few excess hydrogen ions in solution. The fact that it produces few hydrogen ions makes it a weak acid. Bases, or alkaline compounds, are called proton acceptors because they accept excess hydrogen ions. Strong bases, similar to strong acids, completely dissociate in water. A common strong base called sodium hydroxide, NaOH, dissociates into sodium and hydroxide. If an acid, like hydrochloric acid, were to be introduced into the solution containing sodium hydroxide, the hydrochloric acid would also dissociate. The solution would then have hydrogen ions, chloride ions, sodium ions, and hydroxide ions. The hydroxide ions would accept hydrogen ions, forming water and reducing the acidity of the solution. The sodium and chloride ions would also combine to form sodium chloride, salt.
Looking at your pH scale, you need to know that it ranges from 0, highly acidic, which are hydrochloric acid, all the way up to 14, which would be very alkaline. So very acidic, gastric acid, anywhere from 0.9 to 3. So in your stomach is extremely strong acid. And then we get over here with bleach, alkaline at 9.5. You would think that our blood would be nice and neutral at a 7, where pure water is, but it is not. Our blood, we are slightly alkaline, and you need to know these numbers. You need to memorize that blood pH level is 7.35 to 7.45. So 7.35 to 7.45 is our blood. Looking on here, see what else we've got. Saliva, slightly acidic. Urine, think about urine. What do you think your pee would be on this? Would it be alkaline, or do you think it would be acidic? So if our saliva is acidic, our urine is actually slightly acidic as well. Anything that opens up to the atmosphere, which we could be exposed to some bad, nasty bugs, is a little acidic to kill those things or to help ward them off. Let's look at some organic compounds. So these are things that we're going to be building, breaking down, taking in. So let's look at carbohydrates. This is definitely a huge source of energy. Try to go on a low-carb diet and see how you feel. You should feel like really tired, down in the dumps. So carbohydrates are broken down into glucose. And carbohydrates are not only your Snickers bars and pure sugar, but they are also your fruits and vegetables. Those are carbohydrates. The thing is, with, say, a banana or an apple, they could have the same amount of calories, 100 calories, compared to your Snickers bar. The problem with the Snickers bar is it doesn't have any fiber. So it's going to be broken down quickly and the sugar is going to spike quickly. Whereas with an apple, it's going to take us a little while to break that down and to break it down into glucose. So the insulin or the sugar level will just gradually increase rather than spiking. And it's got fiber, and that's why it's taking it longer to break down. So a primary source of sugar that our cells take in is glucose. When we have an excess, we store it as glycogen. So we also store fat when we have an excess of glucose. Lipids is our fat. So this is our reserve energy supply. We like to store that and we like to save it. We won't use it right away. Provide structure to cells. We'll look at the cell lipid layer or the bilipid layer in the next lecture, chapter 3. Insulates our nerves, kind of like the black insulating tape that you put on wires. It insulates as well from other nerves. Serves as vitamins, so we've got some fat-soluble vitamins. Cushions organs. It even holds our eyes up where they need to be. Kind of pushes them up in place. When you've lost a lot of weight, or if you've seen someone that's starving to death, their eyes look sunken. So say a cancer patient that has lost a lot of weight, they'll lose it around their eyes even. That's adipose tissue or lipids, fat. Proteins are the most abundant and important organic compound in the body. Proteins are made up of amino acids, so they're chains of amino acids. You will hear lots and lots about protein. So yes, we know it's important to have proteins to build muscle, but they also are antibodies in our body are made of proteins. A lot of the functioning things that are going on in our body are made from proteins. So they're extremely important. Amino acids, what an amino acid looks like. Again, it's going to be several chains of these to make a protein. What is the body's primary energy source? So we had carbohydrates, which are glucose, proteins made up of amino acids, lipids, which are fat, gets stored as adipose tissue or fat tissue, and water. So definitely your carbohydrates, A, broken down into glucose. Let's touch briefly on nucleic acids. We'll talk about these later on down the road, but nucleic acids include your DNA and your RNA. They consist of thousands of nucleotides. So just like amino acids make proteins, nucleotides make nucleic acids. So they consist of a 5-carbon chain, a phosphate group, and one of the several nitrogen bases. Don't worry about that. You won't see it on the test. You won't see this on the test, what it looks like. We will go into ATP later on again because adenosine triphosphate is extremely important because this is our stored energy. And when we start breaking it apart, we release energy. So you take off a phosphate group, we get energy. And you see we got to have sugar to do that. So let's look at a brief explanation for that.
Food provides the body with energy. However, even when food is broken down, cells cannot use it directly. Instead, cells tap into energy stored within the compound called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. ATP consists of a base, a sugar, and 3 phosphate groups. The phosphate groups are connected to each other with high energy bonds. When one of these bonds is broken through a chemical reaction, energy is released that can be used for work, such as muscle movement, as well as the body's physiological processes. After the bond is broken, ATP becomes adenosine diphosphate, ADP, and a single phosphate. Later, using some of the energy released from the breakdown of the nutrients in food, the single phosphate is reattached to the ADP, again forming ATP. The renewed ATP molecule can now be used again.
Okay, so which statement is true? DNA and RNA are nucleotides. ATP is a nucleic acid. Nucleic acids are inorganic compounds. Nucleotides consist of a sugar, a phosphate group, and a nitrogen base. So what do you think? Oops, sorry. So D, nucleotides consist of a sugar, a phosphate group, and a nitrogen base, definitely. And that is the end of this lecture. Make sure you read your chapter 2. We will do a lot of these activities within the classroom to help cement some of these ideals and concepts. Thank you.